This is Business Unusual. Today we want to have an interesting discussion because we've spoken about the frequency of heaven. We've spoken about heavenly places. We've spoken about the power that God releases that accesses our lives and transforms our environment, bringing change. But sometimes, even as we discuss these things, we reach this milestone where we all believe God is all powerful. We all believe, and I'm using that term carefully because today we want to expand it, that God is capable of doing a lot of things. God has all power and everything. But when it comes to our translating that reality into our lives, we have a major struggle. So today I want to kind of go around a particular scripture and unpack it slowly and see how we are able to turn that invisible into a continuous reality in our life. Not a once in a lifetime, not a once in a moment, not a spontaneous reaction, but a continuous clarity of the things of God. So today we're going to talk about belief. What does it mean to believe? And you know, it's interesting that in our mind, over time, we've always been believe is just, if you ask somebody, what do you believe? I'll quickly make a statement, but many times the statement I'm making is not really what I believe. The statement I'm making may be a part of my belief, may come from my belief, but it's rarely what I believe. And let's look at it a bit deeper today. So, belief is not just passive acceptance. When I accept something and it's okay. It's actually an active agreement. It's an alignment with a certain reality where when you say you believe, you are actually part and parcel of what you're saying you are. You're not just having it as a thought in your mind. You know, in Mark 9:23, Jesus says to the man who had asked him to heal his son, he said to him, if you can believe. Notice, if you can believe. Mark 9:23, all things are possible to him who believes. All things are possible to him. That statement, while very familiar, it's almost like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I don't know if we really listen, pay attention, query it, extract it, and see what Jesus is saying. If Jesus is who he is, if he is really God in the flesh, if he is who he really says he is, he's the Word. And then he says something. He says, if you can believe, which means there is a journey to a place called believe. If you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes. Jesus wasn't dealing with only the situation the man was in. Jesus was suddenly bringing all things into this purview called belief, where he says, if you believe, all things are possible to him who believes. So let's try and break this down today. Let's look at the terms, the actual terms Jesus used, because the New Testament was written in the Greek. So let's get the original terms that Jesus actually used. So the term belief is a very interesting term. It's pisteuo in the Greek. Now, the definition of belief, listen carefully. It means to think to be true. To think to be true. To be persuaded. To place confidence in. To entrust oneself to. To think to be true, it goes beyond that. It goes to be persuaded. Then it says to place confidence in, and then it says to entrust oneself to. So when I say I believe in something, I think it is true. But at the same time, I don't only think it is true, I'm persuaded it is true, so much so that I place my confidence in it to the level I entrust myself to it. That's what the Greek word for belief says. So the funny thing is that the root word for the Greek word for believe, the root word is faith. Because in Greek, pistis is faith, pisteuo is belief. So believing that Jesus spoke about here is a belief that has a root in faith. It's not just a belief of I have an idea, I'm convinced, I think nobody is lying. No. It means I can entrust myself to this thing. I can trust my life to the thing I am calling a belief. So if this is what Jesus is calling it, so it means that he's talking about a full internal conviction. Full internal conviction involving my mind, my emotions, and my will. It has to be a full internal conviction involving my mind, my emotions, and my will. So it means I have to surrender to a reality that is more real than my present reality. That's why it's called to believe, because it hasn't happened yet. All right? All things are possible to him who believes. Now we've looked at belief. We'll still look further at belief. But let's look at another term he used, all things. He didn't specify a particular thing. And the term for all things in the Greek, panta, is a very interesting term. It means all, every kind, without exception or limit. All, every kind, without exception or limit. So the root word for it actually means the entire category of things. So in whatever category you place it, the things in that category, everything inside that category is what he means by all things. So there's no detail you can leave out of that. Everything is part and parcel of that reality. So Jesus is saying, in whatever category, in whatever situation, in whatever thing, in whatever action, without limitation, if you believe, it is possible. So, if that is true, then Jesus here wasn't even being symbolic. In this statement, he was not being metaphysical, he was not being symbolic, he was being practical. He was saying, on the material realm, in full reality, there is no limitation to what is possible if you believe. Now that is a tall order. Jesus is saying, if you believe, if you have conviction, persuaded, and trust yourself to anything, all things, meaning any outcome in any category of your life, over any situation, if you believe and entrust yourself to, and are convinced and persuaded of that outcome, if you do that, it will come out. It is possible. So the term possible, again, here in the Greek, dunata, means a powerful, capable, full of inherent strength or ability to bring something to pass. So the possibility here, when Jesus says possible, the term is actually using means there is a power then released. This power is capable. It is full of inherent strength, and it has the ability to bring whatever you have believed to pass. So if you believe, you release a power that makes anything possible. When you use the term dunata, the root word in Greek, again, today I'm doing a lot of Greek because we must get this thing right, is dunamis. And you know dunamis is where we get dynamite from. So possible here is not hopeful. Possible here is not possibility as we know it. Possible here means power is released that is inherent with capacity to bring to pass what you believed. So Jesus is basically saying, your belief system has power to produce materially. This is Jesus speaking. This is scripture. This is not just a good idea. All right? So, when Jesus said, if you can believe all things are possible, let's try and rephrase that a little bit. This is the phrase I put down. If you entrust your whole being to His word, every kind of outcome will become energized with His power. If you entrust your whole being to His word, every kind of outcome within that word will become energized with His power, meaning it will come to pass. So let's kind of look at what I would call the mechanics or the science of belief. So Based on this conversation, we then begin to understand that belief is a structure. It's not a momentary thought. Belief is not just something you think about. It's actually a structure. It's a whole structure. And the minute you use the term structure, you realize you're using the term components. So belief is not something that just pops up in a moment and disappears. Belief is something so inherent, it is what causes things to pop up. All right? So when you say belief is a structure, let's look at some components of belief. Thoughts. And in this context, not just any thought. Thoughts of what you consciously agree with. What do you consciously agree with? When a thought comes to your mind, when an idea comes in your mind, when a statement is made, when you hear something, do you disagree or agree? So the thoughts you agree with begin to form the basis of your belief. All right? The emotions. So, when you have a thought, it triggers an emotion. This emotion is the inner energy that confirms or conflicts with your thoughts. So, when a thought comes to you, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to accept or reject. But what determines your acceptance or rejection will be an emotion you will have. That emotion will either release energy to strengthen that thought in agreement or will reject it in disagreement. So, we are still in the formation of a thought, of a belief. All right? The next thing that happens, as emotion is released to support that emotion, that is agreeing or disagreeing, your imagination will kick in. The imagination will kick in, and this is an internal visualization that gives shape to what is possible or impossible. So, think again. A thought comes, I agree or disagree with it. If I agree or disagree, there's an energy that is released to empower either. That energy will either go negative in disagreement, fear, offense, anger, whatever, or that energy will go in agreement, joy, excitement, peace. Once that happens, my imagination kicks in to give a visual understanding, internalization, connection, pictures to now reinforce what that thought was. And now that determines if it is possible or impossible. And because of that, now my expectation kicks in. Either I'm in expectation and I expect this to work out, or suddenly now my hope is cut off. This is not going to happen. So expectation kicks in. So once expectation kicks in and anticipation kicks in, either faith or fear will be triggered. Whichever way, it is something that is beginning to now become a force that is going to bring out what I am believing. And what's the next thing that's going to happen? Two things. Your memory will now step into the space. And your memory will determine whether or not, historically, has this happened to us before? Do we trust it? Can we continue with it, or can we reject it? On the other hand, your memory may not have any record, so you're building a new memory, and the problem is that the old memories will have to step in. So here you have a choice. You will either accept your memory of this, or you will trust this to be the truth and begin building a new memory that will take you into a new space to arrive at a new place. So belief is the lens through which you will now interpret possibility or impossibility. This is the reality of where we are going. So now, because I've mentioned all these things, what is the link between belief, emotions, and feelings? Because if we can find that link, we can determine whether that link is helping us or that link is working against us. All right? So emotions are energetic confirmations of your current beliefs. That's why when you had a thought, emotions kicked in. So they're usually the core scenario where you get energetic, an energy that confirms or fights what's coming. So emotions want to support you. So if you disagree with something, they will come out with power in disagreement, or they'll come out in power with agreement. So emotions are the energetic confirmations that support, strengthen, confirm your current beliefs. For example, joy is an emotion that agrees with the truth. When something that is true and powerful that God has said comes to you, the emotion that should come forth is joy, to confirm, to agree, and to work with you. Anxiety, on the other side, is an emotion that comes to dealing with resistance. Whenever there's anxiety, there's usually resistance to something. There is something you're you are disagreeing with. There's something your belief system says is not true. There is something your beliefs are in conflict with. That's where anxiety comes with. So you might want to believe God is going to provide, but your memory, your history, and everything is disagreeing. Therefore, that conflict is called anxiety. On the other hand, God is finally bringing you good, but the old fears are trying to step in, and anxiety becomes that activation that tries to resist. And so whenever you have anxiety, do a quick check. What is the conflict? What is the resistance? And how should I adjust so that I can move from anxiety to joy? The power of your emotions. So if this becomes common, what happens is that if you believe you're secure in God's plan, your feelings will align with the peace. If you're not sure God's plan is for you, your feelings will align with anxiety. That's just the way it works. So beliefs, therefore, set our frequency. Remember we said the kingdom releases a frequency. That frequency we're supposed to access. Belief is our tuner. Belief is what sets which frequency we're operating at, which will determine what we're able to access or not. That's the power of belief. So beliefs don't just inform you. It tunes you. Your belief will tune you. So thoughts are mental signal generators. Emotions are energetic amplifiers. And beliefs are alignment mechanisms. So think of it this way. Your thoughts, signal generators. Your emotions, amplifiers of those signals. And your belief becomes the alignment, the key, the frequency, the set environment from which you operate from. That's how powerful this reality is. So when you believe, you harmonize with what heaven has already completed. So belief brings harmony. Belief brings connection. Belief connects, harmonizes with heaven, and causes a transfer. This is why beliefs are the gatekeepers of our manifestations. Now, if that be true, how are beliefs shaped? How are they shaped? What shapes our beliefs? The first thing that shapes our belief is exposure. When you are, what you repeatedly hear or experience will shape your belief. What are you hearing all the time? And what things are you experiencing all the time? Whatever experiences you're having, whatever you're hearing, it's shaping your belief. And of course, what will happen is how you interpret things. The meaning you assign to something is shaping your belief. When something happens, what does that mean to you? When you hear a sound, what does it mean to you? When you get information, what does it mean to you? When something new some new thought is brought to you, what does it mean to you? That shapes your belief system. Now, conscious or unconscious agreement. When you're agreeing with something, you're shaping your beliefs. Consciously and eventually subconsciously, as you agree with something, you're shaping your belief, and that's why in the future, when you hear something contrary, you'll find you're in disagreement. When you hear something similar, you'll be in agreement. And then emotions reinforce. They validate, they reinforce your belief. Emotions don't agree with what is going on. Emotions agree with what you believe is going on. It gets reinforced. It gets strengthened. It continues to grow. It continues to expand. That's why you should check your emotions and see whatever they are reinforcing, is it good for you or bad? All right? And in this whole process, your identity becomes crucial. Because your identity is what your belief wraps itself around. Who you believe you are, what you believe you are, is going to be very crucial to how your beliefs get shaped. And then it kind of piggybacks on itself. What you believe affects your identity. Your identity affects what you believe. And if it's negative, you have to break the cycle. If it's positive, you need to continue growing it so it becomes more and more and more powerful. We are told that even in a magnet, the strength of a magnet that's being created, not a natural magnet, a magnet that's being created is the power of the coil. The more the copper is coiled, the more powerful the magnet, for good or for bad. So, be careful how your identity and your belief wrap around each other. What are they generating? What power are they generating? All right? So, once a belief is set, it runs in the background. It becomes a permanent, natural filter for everything. So every truth that the kingdom brings to you is targeting your beliefs. Every lie that the enemy is bringing to you is targeting your belief. Because, as Jesus said, whichever way, all things are possible to him who believes. Jesus did not say, though he intended that we only focus on the good, but he did not say only good things. He said all. So all things that are believed are possible. What do you believe? Now, it's time to ask yourself some questions. And here are the questions that I put down, I ask myself, you should ask yourself. What area in my life feels, notice the term I have used, feels impossible right now? Because your feelings are the mirror of your beliefs. They are the accurate mirror of your beliefs. So what areas in your life feel impossible right now? What underlying belief supports that impossibility? Meaning, if there's an area I feel is impossible right now, there must be a belief that supports that feeling. What is that belief? I need to find that belief that supports that feeling. And because if I can find that, then what emotion do I associate with the idea of coming out of that impossibility? In other words, if I believe it's impossible for me right now to succeed in a particular area, what belief, underlying belief do I have that makes me believe I can't? Now, what emotion would I associate with if I broke that impossibility and entered possibility? What emotion? What would I need to believe instead so that I can agree with God's word and elicit that emotion? Are you seeing the journey we are going? What seems impossible? What do I believe that causes me to believe it is impossible? What emotion? Remember, we began by what do I feel? So we want to change that. And what emotion would I feel if that area became possible? And what truth in God's word is there that I can begin to access to change the belief that will trigger this new emotion? What new truth? And how would I reinforce it? What would I do regularly? What would I continue to look at, to speak about, to interact with, to reinforce that new belief, activate that new emotion until the belief is so changed that I can check the emotion and find that the belief changed? Because your emotion is also the antenna that tells you what has changed. So, if Jesus says to me, all things are possible, then I need to ask, what are the things that he has said to me that are possible, that just require my belief? What are these things that I can say, this is possible? And once I see myself at that possibility, what emotion should I have there? Because when that emotion kicks in, I will know my belief has changed concerning that matter. And if I know my belief has changed concerning that matter, I know for a fact that it is possible. Meaning, power, dunamis, has been released to make it happen. What are those things that I can do? All right? So, what are some of the things Jesus did not raise in this conversation? He did not raise longer prayers. He did not raise stronger fasts. He did not give us any of those things. He said, check your belief. And how do I check my belief? Every time a kingdom truth comes my way, what do I feel? The feeling is the mirror, the projection, the screen projector of what I believe concerning that thing. That's what I believe. That's how I know that is a situation. That's how I'm able to track and to tell if I have moved to a place where I believe what God said. So whenever God says something, that thing remains true. But that thing will not change my life until I believe it to be true. And for me to believe it to be true is to reach the place of entrustment, that I know that I can trust my life to that reality. And how do I know I have reached that place? I check my feelings. I check my emotions. And if I see they are vibrating, for lack of a better term, at a good frequency, I'm feeling good about it, I'm feeling peaceful about it, then I know I'm shifting. So what does that tell me? It tells me that if I decide that my pathway is prayer, I pray looking for that vibration. I pray asking God, speaking to God, calling out the things God has said, to arrive at the place where I can sense that I now believe that what I have asked has happened and I'm able to shift. If I check the path of fasting until I reach that truth, because the activity itself doesn't change my belief. In fact, even in prayer, in Mark 11:25, it says, when you pray, believe that you have received and you will have what you prayed for. Now, while that seems like you will have what you prayed for, the real statement is you will not have what you prayed for. You will have what you believed that you prayed for. And that's what tells you, how do I know that I believe? Today I've given you the biggest clue. My emotions, my feelings tell me what I have believed. They tell me they are the outward manifestation of my inner position called belief. Every time they activate, they're sending me a message. They're telling me what we believe. And so, how do I know I have changed? When I hear a truth and my heart rejoices and my peace comes up and excitement and joy wells up in me, then I know I have changed the frequency. Then I know I am now tuned in. Then I know it is not only possible, it is my possible, and I will see the outcome. So please understand, belief is not perfection. Belief is progress. There are dimensions we grow in, aspects of belief we grow in, different structures of belief we grow in, until we arrive at the outcome. But at every stage, that feeling, that vibration, that comfort, that joy becomes very familiar. So every time a new truth hits you and you pick up that vibration, you know you've received that truth. You know you are convinced about it. You know you have entrusted it, and you know it will work for you. That is a power tool which, if we're able to embrace today, things that have been pending for you may suddenly switch and begin to happen. And you wonder, what happened? I changed my belief. It's like heaven sent it, I wasn't receiving it because my belief system was rejecting it. But now that my belief system has kicked in, all things are possible because I believe. And this is where I talk about our mind gyms. Why do we have a mind gym? We have a mind gym because if we can handle our minds, we'll be able to track our beliefs. And we'll be able to know what is the architecture of our belief system. And if we can change that architecture, people, the impossible will become normal. The supernatural will become our life. The invisible will become visible because we made this change. And this is also why we have our master classes. Because in the master class, we now query. You see, the mind gym makes us aware, makes us fully aware of that architecture, makes us, sometimes it reveals the gaps, it reveals the fears, it reveals the limitations. But when you come down to the master class, we begin to tackle and to deal with each situation and to begin to switch on these parameters, to begin to tune in, and amazing things begin to happen. I can tell you amazing things are happening in people's lives. Amazing opportunities are unpacking. People are growing. Why? Because heaven has always been transmitting. We are the missing link. So it's time for us to lock in and to access what heaven has for us. And this is where I say, keep it kingdom, keep it pure. God bless you.